Memorial Day. Thank you to all of our troops, everyone that laid down their life for us. I'm sorry I forgot to mention it. It's in my notes, but I forgot, and I completely apologize for that. But we have one of the greatest men that I've ever met in my life, Carter the Power Bryant. Carter, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, Blake? Greatest? I mean, I'm probably the greatest 5'7", 215, chunky center midfield undersized defensive tackle you've ever met in your life. But outside of that wide sample size of human beings, I don't even think I'm in the top 100 of the
Well,
coolest
listen,
people.
you've changed my life for the best.
Huh?
Okay,
Huh?
and
Huh? Huh?
this is a small plug to our people out in Albany. Carter, I can't leave our place out in Albany. Don't tell him yet. Don't tell him where it is. But you changed my life forever on that. And I love you as a brother too. All right, Carter, I gotta ask you. When stuff goes to me, and look, I run to you for a lot of things, and I'm not too proud. I'm not, you're a great friend of me. And we cover LSU, we talk LSU a lot on this platform and on your platform. Is there anything on God's green earth that Brian Kelly said last week that was worth a damn for everybody to freak out about? Oh, you shouldn't call out Saban. You call out Saban, they're going to beat you down. Carter, to win a national title, he's got to beat him anyway. I mean, what did he say that wasn't factual?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you get hired, you should say you don't want to beat Nick Saban. That just to make everybody happy. I think that's what you should do, right? Like, I don't want to be the best. That's just not. I don't want to ever beat that Nick Saban guy.
Well, that part I don't get. And look, Carter, he was blunt to his own former player's face.
Right.
Okay, Brian Kelly said, guys, I can't get Keishon Boutte to come to South Bend. I can't get Mason Smith to come to South Bend. If I want to win a national title, I have to go to LSU. And for me, Carter, as a guy from the out, look, we get so many times we look at LSU and put those purple and gold glasses on. But when you hear from one of the best college football coaches, and look, the winningest coach in Notre Dame's history, that holds serious weight. And you got to applaud him for that.
Yeah. And look, it's still drastic. That's why you still see so many national stories surrounding not only, Brian Kelly, but you also hear it about Lincoln Riley as well, because I understand like the Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban beef was such a massive story. It's a shocking story, right? But it's, is it totally unprecedented? Kind of, sort of. But the Lincoln Riley, Nick Saban story is still, to me, one of the biggest stories in college football history.
To people that don't know about that, can you give a little background?
Yeah. So, like, for the national media who don't understand college football and why they had to leave their teams before the end of the year, they don't get that you have to do it to beat the December signing period, right?
Right.
So that's why you have to do it. But the national media doesn't understand that. I have friends that, do non-college football stuff. They're not familiar with college football. And to be honest, it's a foreign concept to them, right? It is kind of weird, right? You would leave your team, but you have to do it. You have to do that, right? That's part of the reason why the story was so big, because you go from one upper tier program to another, but it happened twice. And it was related, right? Because LSU's reported interest in Lincoln Riley and so on and so on. So, I still think there is people out there that didn't like that those two did what they did, especially now that the Jordan Addison story happened, especially, people in general just don't like Brian Kelly. I could understand partially why, but that's part of it, Blake. There's always, until football's actually going to be played, because the Riley and Kelly story was so big, it's still going to have ripple effects. And every long interview you do, that people are going to look for something, because Brian Kelly does generate a lot of clicks.
And look, there are some things that can be look, the biggest thing to me, Carter, and we're going to get to recruiting because I want your take of should we be freaking out about not more in-state kids committed at this point.
Right.
Amari Miller decommitted today, okay?
Yeah.
But to me, the biggest thing that Brian Kelly said this week was, and he told Jacques Doucet this, was, hey guys, when the legislation changes in July, we already have everything plan in place to where we're legally able to do things in NIL and we're ready to go.
Right.
Carter, that is the biggest news because if, which everybody said LSU was behind, somebody, forgot to tell Brian Kelly that because he's going on with Jacques Doucet saying, I'm prepared, wait for it, we're coming. That's the biggest LSU football news in the last 6 months outside of him being hired. If we're being truthful, it's not Harold Perkins. It's not any of it because they're using NIL to be able to compete. That's my biggest thing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And once again, it's still so early, and still LSU's 2023 class is fine right now. So, as far as like the name, image, and likeness stuff, I get a ton of messages about this, because you don't hear as many flashy name, image, and likeness stories with LSU as you do, obviously, Texas A&M. But it's fine. I wouldn't panic overall, but it is going to be interesting, especially if LSU doesn't win this first game versus Florida State, how people feel, especially considering that Brian Kelly beat Florida State last year in the season opener. So it's going to be so different. But if I were, talking, and you have a bunch of rational LSU fans, I wouldn't worry too much about everything that's happening right now because games will be played and we'll finally have something to really talk about.
Now, this is what in the business, we'll get to Ans in just a second, but this is what we call a transition in our business. Rob sends us $9.99 super chat. Ask Carter why he thinks no one talks about Harold Perkins. They should be. And that's the point, Carter, right? Like the point is nobody talk. How do you get Harold Perkins flipped? Okay, now let's talk about him. Nobody's really talking about him right now. We can confirm that the story about him yesterday was true. He just got on campus yesterday because of Texas school system. Carter, he's here now. I mean, what you've been the guy that's banged that drum. Thinks he can play. I think he can play too. When you see Harold Perkins, what do you see? And we've talked about this before, but what do you see is his role right now?
Yeah, and Rob's a good friend of mine, and it's a great question, right? Look, as far as Harold Perkins arriving a little bit later than everyone else, I wouldn't worry too much about that either. Because look, at this point, he's got nowhere else to go. He's got to at least play this year at LSU, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's in his best interest to obviously go out there and ball out of control. Now, as far as what his role is going to be next year, it comes down to how you view him as a prospect. I just view him as this guy that's just good at everything. And sometimes that's a blessing. Sometimes that's a curse, right? We view him as this linebacker. Now, is it great that he's going to play linebacker for LSU? Absolutely. And Matt House played a big role in the recruitment there at the end. But, this was a guy who also took some carries at running back all the way up until the Under Armour All-American game. And his running back tape is really special, and he's verified sub 4.540. And this is something that I'm working on my channel. You and I have been discussing it privately. You've helped me with some of it as well. Harold Perkins is the perfect size to play running back, right? So obviously he's going to play defense. I don't think he's going to play offense at all. We just got over a really bad, scenario this past couple of years. Should Derek Stingley play both ways? No, I don't think anyone. I know some of the old schoolers in there are feeling, well, I remember, Ray
Back in my day, Charles Woodson played both
Charles
ways.
Woodson. And obviously the best two-way player in the SEC was Champ Bailey. But, I don't see that as a potential option, but it could be that he is a better running back, but he wants to play linebacker. And, where he plays is going to be interesting. But I think the most plausible scenario for Harold Perkins in year one is the Marcel Brooks role. And Marcel Brooks was, a very disruptive force towards the end of the year in 2019. Now, was he all world? No, but he did change that LSU defense when that extra speed came in on those race car blitz packages on 3rd and long.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I know that there was flags thrown on him, but he had 2 crucial sacks. Okay, I think one was against Trask against Florida. Remember, he hit him in the knees. They called it bogus.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like when you have a guy like that, I agree. But let me ask you this: Harold Perkins is a fantastic get, and I think doesn't get talked about a lot in NIL. And you said, "Don't worry and don't panic." Carter, why am I not panicking about Brian Kelly and recruiting? Like, am I the one that's naive? I mean, because look, I said this earlier. You're naive if you think LSU didn't get NIL and I don't want to say outbid, but put things together in NIL for Harold Perkins. You're naive, Carter.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
And so is it bothering you, or are we going through a phase right now with NIL that we just haven't seen yet, and we need more data to find out what happens in recruiting?
Yeah, so let's take 2023, for instance. LSU's doing fine. I don't really see, the big panic, right? If you know a little bit more about like Eli Holstein and Arch Manning, you would understand that there wasn't really ever heavy LSU leans. Like, that's not saying that either one of them can't pick LSU in the grand scheme of things. But if you know a decent amount of, and I'm not saying you have to know their parents, next door neighbors, or anything like that, but there was never like super heavy LSU momentum for either of them. So there's going to be plenty of people that say, well, if LSU doesn't land either one of those guys, it's the be all end all, and it's not, right? I do think when it comes to recruiting, there are a few players in 2023 that there's no such thing as a must-get recruit, but there are some guys in 2023 that it would be gigantic losses, right? Take Shelton Sampson Jr., who actually right now is my number 1 player in 2023 in Louisiana. I think he's the highest priority, number 1, because of the position he plays. Number 2, because LSU's wide receiver room wasn't really, what you expected it to be in this last recruiting class. Ibieta might be great. We'll see. But, Sampson is that real deal difference maker. And I think, LSU is going to put a lot of focus on that, especially now with, the news that happened today. And then obviously Kai Prian is someone else, right? Going to St. James, where Shaz obviously was there last year. So, as far as like Brian Kelly is concerned, get a few wide receivers, stay the course, win some games, and LSU will finish with no less than a top 10 class. And then build on that to where you can get LSU back to having those top 5 national classes, which is pretty much where you need to be now to win a national championship.
LSU was number 18 in the country in the recruiting rankings. That was the staple of their class for the national championship in 19. And because of the portal, man, the portal changes so many things. A kid leaving your state today is a kid that might be returning tomorrow. You just don't ever know. So I agree. And look, I let me say this. Of the players I saw last year, I thought Shelton Sampson was maybe the best athlete in the state. I thought Preen from St. James might be number 2. That kid is dude, that kid's a baller, dude. That kid can ball, bro. I don't know if he's coming to LSU or not. I don't know about that. That kid can, like, that kid's got swag. Like when LSU does, man, I got that swag. If there's a picture of that, it would be him. That kid plays with some swag, man. That's all I'm saying. Reminds me of a late bloomer like Aaron Anderson. Okay? We'll see about that. Carter the Power Bryant. You can follow him on Twitter. Carter the Power Hour LSU. Go do that. You can get all of his great content. Carter, we're 97 days away from LSU football. What I hate to say it like this, but what are your expectations right now in the offseason? Now, here's the reason I asked that, because the NCAA is approving that coaches can act and coach in July and go through walkthroughs for a limited amount of time in July, and they're going to implement this. Carter, if you're going to do that, there's not really a lot of excuses to be rusty. Like if
Right.
you're able to walk through things in July, that makes me feel a lot better about LSU and opening up with Florida State. What about you?
Yeah, you should feel that way, right? You should also feel that way that Florida State themselves has had a lot of drastic changes in their own program, right? No OC. Now the head coach is the play caller, along with the offensive line coach being the co-OC. And for me, going into the Florida State game, and I truly do feel this way, even though Brian Kelly is going to be the story, he is the biggest story in this game. It is the first game of the Brian Kelly era. He's not going anywhere. And I know there's a lot of pressure for LSU to not lose 3 straight openers, but all the pressure in my mind is on Florida State. And I'm going to feel this way all the way leading up because, well, all offseason, Mike Norvell, who coached his whole life to get his opportunity to coach at a top 20 program in Florida State, every day has to, hear his fan base saying, we want Deion Sanders. We want someone else that's not you to be the guy. And that to me puts all the pressure on Florida State. So, as far as like leading up to it, and this is the number one question you probably get, Blake. This is the number one question I get, right? What is LSU's record going to be? What are your reasonable expectations? And we touched on this just a little bit, the last time I was on here, Blake. Understand that this is going to be one of the strongest schedules LSU has ever had, ever. I would, you go back, the 2011 schedule was tough, playing Oregon the first game of the year. Florida State's not on that same level. But what's very interesting is you look at a stat like SP Plus, right? SP Plus, Bill Connolly, the analytic. Every Power 5 team on LSU's schedule has a better SP Plus than LSU, which is a predictive metric that predicts how efficient you are, how much returning production you have, so on and so on. And we touched on this last week. So that should factor in as well, how difficult the schedule will be, because that should not necessarily lower your expectations, but understand that this is no longer the bottom feeder SEC where, Mississippi State is a gimme win this year and Arkansas is a gimme win this year. There's none of that. And that's going to be the biggest change for us as LSU fans. Each and every week is going to be so brutal this year.
I'm so glad you said that because, look, I love the LSU faithful in Twitter spaces. Okay? I do.
You should.
But they're wrong about this one in reference to Carter, Tennessee, Mississippi State,
right,
Arkansas, Florida. If Anthony Richardson even has a half of a pulse of what I think he's going to do, Alabama. And look, again, I'm not going to count out Max Johnson yet. Okay. I still believe that when you have 13 games as a starter and you score 38 total touchdowns, I get the Jimbo factor. But he's not worse than Jake Peets. He's just not. Carter, I know you don't like that, but A&M on the road, you going on the road to A&M, and Jimbo Fisher being there where he has pulled some magic, I'm not going to bet against this is a tough schedule. Here's the great thing, though. I've told you this. I watched the A&M defense and offensive line last week, and then I wanted to compare it to LSU's this year. Carter, they're
good. They're really good there.
That front seven for LSU is nasty. If Micah Baskerville and Greg Penn play the way that we think that they can, along with Mike Jones, who? Carter, they have the potential to be the best front seven in the country. With that being said, I still believe that their schedule at the end of the season could be ranked number 1 of strength of schedule.
Yeah. No, look, to the Max Johnson comment, okay?
Here we go.
You know I'm not sour grapes bias. He's gone from LSU fan. Now, like, that shit's not who I am. Like, for instance, Elias Ricks left LSU. He's still a top 5 corner in college football. So I'm not just saying what I'm about to say about Max Johnson just because he's no longer with LSU. He's not a good quarterback. And I know his spring game was good, but I know what you're saying. Okay. He's got all this experience. He's got 13 games experience. And now he's going to get, tabula rasa. He gets a clean slate with the new coach, right? The issue, though, is true sophomore quarterback rating. If you look at just ESPN's QBR, is actually a little bit more stable from your second year to your third year. That was according to a study done by Chris Moxley, where, we tend to think if you start as a true sophomore and you're not so great, we tend to think that if you start year 3, you could take a leap up. More often than not, who you are as a true sophomore quarterback turns out to be who you are, right? So for me, Max Johnson, yes, touchdown to interception ratio was really good at LSU. He also had a ridiculous amount of turnover luck, such as, if he fumbled the ball would have a favorable bounce. And he had a lot of interceptable throws that were either drops or, Jack Besh would get a tip and, it wouldn't be an interception or whatever.
Cole Taylor, Mississippi State touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. That you got very lucky that two guys, just ran into each other.
Most Mississippi State ever, but continue.
Yeah, and also to add to your point, there was his first touchdown throw in that game was as good as it gets, but the deep ball to Trey Palmer was a coverage bust, so on and so on. And Max Johnson doesn't see the deep middle of the field. The deep touchdown pass to Trey Palmer was his first attempted pass to the deep middle of the field up to that point in his career. So Max Johnson doesn't pull the trigger. Even if he's looking in the direction, he's afraid to pull the trigger. He doesn't play with a lot of confidence. And I don't know if that just changes going from one place to the next, especially considering I don't think A&M's receivers are going to be as good as what he had last year. I mean, he had an amazing group of receivers last year and still was wildly inconsistent. Now, the play calling was bad, but I just don't think I don't think he's going to win that job. I think Haynes King's going to win that job. And I think Connor Weidren's going to end up being better than him in the long term.
I agree with that.
I just don't see Max Johnson at Texas A&M really being anything.
They ran dual slants to the short side of the field. Carter, it was, I get it, but
no, true. Pete's was rough.
He's ass, dude.
Pete's was rough.
Oh, bad.
Right.
I get it. Let's get off this. But you talk about interceptable throws and passes that didn't get picked off. My first thought was Garrett Nussmeier does too.
That is very true.
So let's just be cautious of.
Yeah.
The only person that didn't put a ball completely in harm's way multiple times was Jaden in the spring game. Now, again, Carter, if their philosophy is run the football, great defense, and not turn the ball over, then Garrett is not your guy.
Right. Yeah.
He's just not. But if you want to be like risk it for the biscuit and all else goes, then sure, throw him out there. I don't give a shit. But yeah. I mean, I'm just saying. Anyway, Carter, last
your chat's been lit, man. There have been your chat is getting some hot takes in here. I just looked at it a minute ago.
Okay, what's it saying?
Jack Besh is going to be on the bench.
Court, yeah.
But then I see Jack Besh is going to be on the bench. Rico, wow.
Okay, Booty, Neighbors, Thomas, and Hilton will keep Besh on the bench.
No, I mean,
no.
Okay, let me say this. Okay, Jack did jump on the channel. He's a great guy. I've gotten to know him a little bit. All right. Objectively speaking, that guy had one of the best true freshman seasons of any LSU wide receiver ever. Right. He was really that good. When you look at the amount of times he moved the chains on third down and all the different things we asked this guy to do, right? Oh, you've never played tight end before? Oh, you've never blocked before? We need you to do it now, right? And he did it, right? He was phenomenal last year. Now, for a true freshman wide receiver, he was phenomenal. Now, I'm not saying he is the next Jamar Chase, but he was really freaking good. Now, the other guys could very well keep him on the bench because all the guys that he just mentioned were really good football players. But Jack Besh gets open on third down. And there's just no other way to put it. That is one of the most valuable traits you can have as a receiver. He's physical, good after the catch. I think his ADOT will go up. I think Yak will be even better for him. I really do think there is more room for him, even if people think he's already reached his ceiling.
I do think, to Rico's point a little bit, I don't think that you have a legit starter at 3 and 4. Okay, meaning I think that you have Kayshawn,
Right.
and you might have Jure. Okay, because Brian Kelly historically loves big body receivers that can run. Okay, I think that they'll go full. Speaking of the Saints, I got the hat on. Carter, the way that I've been told is they're going to Sean Payton that thing. Different formations and different bunch packages are going to have different personnel. If you have this personnel, let's just call it Tiger Package 1, okay? We heard him call it that in the spring game. Tiger Package 1 was a bunch to the right. You had Jack Besh, Cole Taylor, and Malik Neighbors. Jack Besh, Jure Jenkins, and Malik Neighbors. When Malik Neighbors ran the out, Jure ran the corner, okay, and then Jack ran the little hitch, okay, but they're rotating in receivers. I think that this is going to be more of the only guy that I don't think they rotate in and out like that is Kayshawn. He's the only man that you're not rotating, okay?
Yeah.
But I say all that. Jack Besh is just a animal. Right. And you can't take – Carter, in my opinion, he's your number 2 receiver.
Same thing. All the data supports that too, right? Like you look. Okay, so last year going into last year, I did a few videos on Jure Jenkins being the clear number 2, right?
It wasn't close. It wasn't
close, but I kept hearing Trey Palmer, Devonta Lee, and look, we had a full year where Jure won us some football games, right? But we wanted to pick, we wanted to pick some unproven guys. Well, you look at a lot of the traits, right? So Jure Jenkins going into last year was the best player on the team when it comes to drop percentage, minimum 15 targets. Same thing with Jack Besh. Of the players that had 20 or more targets last year, I believe Jack Besh's drop percentage per SEC StatCat was the best.
It was the best. And again, Carter, to rudely interrupt you, it wasn't close.
It wasn't close. It was not close. Here's the thing, right? Those other guys might be faster than him. All those things, right? But he gets open on third down when it matters the most. For instance, okay, Jack Besh was robbed of his best highlight last year, the Mississippi State catch, right? And I've talked to him a long time about that, right? And he swears up and down he caught the ball. We had 1,000 replay angles of him Jarvis Landrying the ball off the ground.
Agreed.
He caught it, and he was robbed of that opportunity. And that was on third down on an inaccurate ball thrown by Max Johnson. He gets open, and he is tough to bring down on first contact. I think, Malik of those 4 is probably the best after the catch. But Jack is also really good with the football in his hands. I just think as far as what he does over the middle of the field is really, really tough to do. As far as just getting open, the game on the line, if I need you to get open and just find a window, he's going to do it. We saw it versus Texas A&M. So you look at the catch data, you look at all these different things. I think Besh this year does separate and become close to an all-SEC level player, if not an all-SEC player this year. It's a clear number 2 behind Kayshawn.
We do have some news. Brody says that Josh Smith just led off with a single in his first at bat in Major League Baseball. That's absolutely fantastic. That's awesome.
Good.
I love and by the way, Carter, in no way possible should baseball go to 7 innings other than midweek games.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Throwing that out there. All right, buddy, I love you. What you got coming up on the show this week?
Yeah, man, we got a lot of deep dives and all kinds of fun stuff. Working on that running back study you've been helping me with. I really appreciate your input on.
I got one for you. I forgot.
Yeah, feel free to text me, man. So I've been lucky to meet a few people that were really, really good, running backs. So I've gotten their feedback on that. Spoken to some offensive linemen like you, as far as which trait really stands out. And there's actually one very simple one. We won't reveal it here, but that
The cleats they wear.
But yeah, just be on the lookout. And what's very interesting is it's something that we don't normally think about with running backs, and it's something we'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is Brian Kelly actually did the same thing with his running backs at Notre Dame. So that's what that was something else.
We know what we call that.
Go on ahead.
Spooky moment of the night. All right, buddy.
But I didn't mean to call out Rico. I don't want him to hate. He probably hates me. Rico's like one of the best names of all time.
You know what, man? If you don't want to catch a case, then you don't want to be out there in the streets slinging that dope so you don't get hit with that Rico. Hashtag Meek Mill.
There you go, man. Look at you.
I'm about to get hit with that Rico.
But Blake, last thing, Liverpool needed you on Saturday and you didn't watch. That's why we lost the Champions League. It's because of you. Because I tried to get you on board, and of course you didn't jump on board. So
I've told you this the last 3 weeks in a row. The Italian champ does what the F he wants. Okay. I was drinking a very fine Pilsner, Miller Lights, and a Blue Night Skies, and I was watching SEC baseball.
There you go, baby.
So I'm going to be there Saturday. LSU, hopefully LSU.
You're going?
Versus, yes.
You're going?
My first cousin was a closer at Southern Miss about 7-8 years ago. Huge Southern Miss fan. I have been ripping him a new one. A golden eagle looks like a buzzard on steroids. Does Hattiesburg have more than just a Dairy Queen? And I got the response in here. We have a Whataburger. I mean, like, bro, this is Big Daddy baseball. You got to bring it. By the way, I'm making him sit behind the LSU dugout. Row two, behind the LSU dugout. I'm going to be screaming at Jay, put in Gervais. Put in Gervais. I want the Italians, Carter. Look, the New York Yankees won multiple World Series with the Italians at the front and center. What are you doing?
Yeah, hey. So are we going to get AYS from Southern Miss? Do we have some?
You're damn right. We're chugging beers. Carter, I'm taking 2 beers like my name's Stone Cold.
There you go.
In the middle of Southern Miss fandom. We're going to their tailgate. I'm going to smash them, and I'm going to drink them, and I'm wearing a white T-shirt so people could – Blake's Gone Wild. That's what we're going to call it.
I want you smashing those things like there's some zillion symbols, baby. That's what I want.
I'm going to be – bro, the Southern band is going to recruit me. When we go out there and play neck, I'm going to hit it with the – Anyway. All right, we got to go.